Welcome back. In this video, I want to talk a little bit more about HTTP requests and how they work and what they look like. So remember, when I go to a URL in my browser, like this one here, it doesn't matter what it is, and I hit enter, the most important thing that happens, there's a few steps, but the most important step is that a HTTP request is sent to a particular server's IP address. And then the server figures out what to send me, and then it sends a HTTP response back to me. So if there's one thing you take away from all of this stuff about how the internet works in HTTP, it's the request response cycle. You ask for a web page and you get one back. To help us learn a little bit more about requests, we're going to use a tool called Postman. It's a free tool, and the website is getpostman.com. And all we need to do is click on Get It Now, and then it will take us to a Chrome extension page, and then all you need to do is click this button to install it. And then once you have it installed, you can launch the app. So this is Postman here. I'll go ahead and make it full screen. The whole point of Postman is that it lets us make HTTP requests and view responses, and it's really for developers to understand how things are working, possibly to debug something if the data is not coming back the exact way that you're expecting it to. We're going to use it really as an educational tool, and we'll also use it for some debugging later on, once we start building some more complicated apps. So before I actually demonstrate it, just want to remind you, when I go to a web page and I click enter, like I'm doing here, that is making an HTTP request. But that's not the only way to make a request. With Postman, we don't actually have a web page, and I can still make HTTP requests. I just want to reiterate that we can make requests from all different places. We can make them from a browser like Chrome. We can make them from an app like Postman. We can make them from our command line from the terminal. We can make them from other apps. We can make them from the backend or from an iOS app. So the idea of HTTP requests are independent of browsers. Let's go ahead and make our first request. So when we make a request, the most important part is the URL that we're making a request to, which is google.com in this case. We're just trying to replicate when I go to google.com in my browser and I hit enter. And then there's this choice here: get, post, patch, put, delete, all these different what we call HTTP verbs. And these refer to different types of requests that we can make. We'll be seeing these a lot more and spending more time, in particular with get, post, put, patch, and delete. These other ones are much, much less important. I'll give you a very quick version of what they do. These just tell the server what we're doing with the request, what type of requests we're making. If we're just retrieving information, like retrieving the Google homepage, that's a get request. If I am signing up for a website or creating a new comment on Facebook or submitting a new Reddit post or upvoting, those could be post requests where I'm posting new information to a database somewhere. I'm sending some data along with my request. Versus a get request, typically, we're not sending much data along, we're asking for data to come back. And then put and patch are used to update things or to edit them. So if I wanted to update the title of a Facebook image that I had uploaded, after I had already posted it, I could use a put or a patch request. And of course, the user doesn't decide on this ever. This is what the developer decides on. And then we have a delete request, which does what it sounds like. When a server gets a delete request, it expects that you're going to delete something. But what's most important is that this is all just a protocol. Remember that HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So it doesn't mean that just by sending a delete request, something is automatically deleted. What it does mean is that it's a protocol, so if I say that this is a delete request, we should expect that it will delete something. So again, very high level overview. We'll be going into depth with all of these here, these first 5 verbs and the different types of requests when we actually make a server that handles them. But to start, I'm just going to make a get request to google.com, and that's all we need to do. And if I click send, I get a few things back. There are 3 important parts of every response. The first one is the body of the response. That's like the payload, that's what is being sent back. So the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript in this case. And this is the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript of the Google homepage. This is what we would see if we went to Google and did view page source, just like this. There we go. So our browser just takes that and makes it look nice. Then the other thing that we get back is the headers. So the headers are like the metadata about the response. So they contain a few pieces of information. The important ones that I'll point out are the content type. So this says, okay, just to warn you, I'm sending back HTML, because we can actually send back other types, which we'll see later on. All that we've seen so far, though, is HTML. Also the date and the time when this response happened, when it was sent back. And then this thing called status, which we also get up here. So the status code is the third big piece of information, and it's just a number. You've probably seen them before, most importantly 404, if you've ever seen a 404 error. A status code is just part of the protocol of HTTP. It's a standardized way of saying that the request that you made is good. I'm going to send back status code 200 because I found the page you're looking for. Here you go. But then if we send a request to a page that doesn't exist, the server needs a way to respond back to us. So there are different status codes, and they each mean different things. We'll be working with them again later on in the class. So we have the body, which is the content that's being sent back, the headers, which contain metadata about the response, and one of those pieces is the status code. And that's just a number that represents the status of this whole request/response cycle. So I'll demonstrate this with another website like reddit.com, just like that. And we'll also make a GET request. Every time I load up my browser and I go to a URL like reddit.com, that is a GET request. I cannot make a POST request from my browser search bar. We can make a POST request using a HTML form, which we mentioned briefly when we talked about forms, and we will be doing that. For now, we're just focusing on GET requests. Earlier I mentioned when we send a request, like a GET request, we're usually asking for information back. And when we send a POST request, we're trying to add data to a database. So there's some sort of payload in the request where I'm sending in the information that I want to be added. For instance, the information to make a new post on Facebook or on Reddit. But we still can send some data with a GET request. I'll give you a quick example. If I go to reddit.com, which I have open here, and I do a search. So let's say I want to search for corgis, and I hit enter. Notice what happens up here. So it's reddit.com/search Q equals corgis. What type of request do you think I make when I hit enter right here? Well, I just told you a few minutes ago that the only type of request we can make is a GET request from the browser search bar or the nav bar. So this is a GET request, but we're also sending a little piece of information along with it, which is our search term. And it's still a GET request. We're not adding corgis to a database anywhere. We're not posting anything new to this application or to the database. We're purely retrieving information, retrieving posts that have corgis in their title. This is how we can send some data along with a GET request. It's called the query string. So I can add in parameters here, as many as I want, something like name equals colt, and it won't do anything. But the server will get that, and if it was expecting a name, if Reddit was expecting a name parameter, it would see that name is equal to colt. So I can tag as many of these as I want. I can do another one here, city equals SF, and I can keep chaining these together, but they don't mean anything except for Q, which is something that the Reddit server is expecting. On the search page, reddit.com/search, when we make a request, it's expecting Q to be equal to the search term. One last thing about the query string is that it always starts after a question mark, and that we separate the key value pairs. So Q equals corgi, name equals colt. They're separated by an ampersand. To actually send one of these, you can go back here, and I can click on params here. And what params let me do is I can add in a URL parameter, key, and value. So here, let's say that I want Q to be equal to cats. You can see Postman makes this little request for me, and it adds the query string in. So now if I hit send here, I'm making a GET request to reddit.com, Q equals cats, I'm not going to get back the search results because this is on reddit.com/search, not just reddit.com. So now if I go back and do reddit.com/search q equals cats, this is making a request to the search page and saying we're searching for cats. Let's click send and go to body here. We get a bunch of HTML, and I'll scroll through, and it's hard to see because there's so much information, but we have references to cats in the HTML. And in Postman, we can actually click on preview, and we can see that we get information about cats. So these are all posts about cats. It's not perfect, the CSS isn't showing up, but it's at least the HTML that we can view. To summarize all of this, we kind of covered a lot here. First thing was that you can make a request from all sorts of different places. It's not only in your browser. The next thing is that every request has a verb or a type. And we've been making GET requests only so far. But soon we'll see POST requests when we actually have a database going and we want to let users sign up or submit a new comment or something like that. They'll be sending a POST request, and our server is going to expect a POST request and do something when it gets a POST request. So GET requests are for retrieving information, searching often, just getting a home page or getting any page that doesn't involve sending data. But we can still send data with the GET request. Usually it's when we're sending like a search query or another parameter about how we want the data to be sorted or what order it should be in. But the key is that we're still not adding anything to the database. This doesn't change Reddit's database. It's just asking for things that have cats in the title. And all that logic happens on Reddit's backend, written in Python. And Reddit's backend is going to see that we ask for reddit.com/search as a GET request, and then it has some code that will run when a GET request is made to reddit.com/search. And in that code, it will then look for the variable q inside of the query string, and it will take the corresponding value cats, retrieve all the posts, all the comments, or whatever it does that match cats, and then send me back all this HTML. We'll be returning to Postman later on in this course as a way of debugging some of our own applications. Next up, we're going to start talking about Node.